Welcome back to Sports for Real. I'm your host, Coach Hall, and today I want to talk about great NFL comebacks. Yesterday, you witnessed the Vikings come back from 33 down to topple the Colts in overtime, but those kind of comebacks, although they're rare, they have happened a lot, and because of my age, I've been around to catch all of them. So I want to recap today those great comebacks, and instead of putting them into order of the biggest numbers, I'm going to go in the year that they took place. So going all the way back to 1980. 1980 is significant for me because that's the time I started to realize all the things that was going on around me. First thing I noticed, that bridge collapsed down in St. Petersburg. Then Dr. Duncan Stein Griffith led Louisville to a 59-54 upset. Well, not necessarily upset, but a championship victory over UCLA. Then you had the Olympic boycott. And then when the football season started, or it came to the end, in week number 14, the winless Saints, jumped out to a 35-7 halftime lead over San Francisco. Now, Frisco wasn't necessarily that great, but they were much better than New Orleans. Well, this became the legend of Joe Montana. Joe Montana led the Niners to a 28-point comeback to stick the game into overtime, and they were able to kick a field goal in overtime to win that game, 38-35. Again, that started the legend of Joe Montana, and that was way back in 1980. The next big comeback, you have 1993. The Oilers jumped all over the Bills. Now, I was rooting for the Oilers to get by the Bills because every time the Oilers get close, it seemed like something happened to them. But not this day. He went up to 28-3 at halftime, and then they got the interception coming out of halftime to go up 35-3. So you knew that game was over, right? Well, not so fast. Buffalo began a furious comeback. They scored a touchdown, kicked onside kicks. The next thing you know, they're back in the game. They kept that hot Warren Moon offense on the sideline, and they couldn't really do any more damage. But when they tied the game up, the Oilers had to go down and kick a field goal just to send it to overtime. They did that. But Buffalo, they got the ball back, and they was able to kick the game-winning field goal and win 41-38. That was back in 1993, and it catapulted the Bills back to the Super Bowl. The next big comeback, 2014, the Chiefs was putting a whipping on the Colts. They were up 31-10 at halftime and came right out in the early third quarter and put 10 more to go up 41-10 before the Colts all of a sudden caught fire. They stormed all the way back. They ended up winning the game, and it didn't go to overtime, but it was a heartbreak for the Chiefs because it seemed like every time, like the Oilers, every time it looked like they had something going on, things went against them in the end. And in that particular day, the Chiefs got knocked off by the Colts. Now, quick little timeout. Big comebacks don't always happen in football, but they're more common in basketball. And just so I happened to catch one of the biggest in college basketball. You know, Kentucky used to light it up in the early to mid-90s under Pitino with that three-pointer. And I don't normally watch the games at night, but I saw that Kentucky was playing LSU, so I figured let me watch Kentucky a little bit before I go to sleep. Well, LSU had different plans. They jumped right on Kentucky, and they was whipping them for most of the game, on through halftime up to about 5 minutes deep into the second quarter. They had built the lead all the way up to 31 points. But guess what? The three-point shots I was talking about, they started to hit everything. And coincidentally, LSU started to miss everything. Kentucky stormed all the way back, took the lead with a couple minutes left. Then guess what happened then? LSU got hot, and they put pressure on Kentucky. But Kentucky ended up getting the bounce in the end to complete that 31-point comeback. All right, next NFL comeback, Super Bowl 51. The Falcons was whipping the Patriots. They were up 21-3 at halftime. They get the ball come out in the second half, and they scored a touchdown, 28-3. True story. I don't normally watch games with other people. I like to watch the games by myself. But I was sitting next to Mr. Boyd. So as soon as they scored that touchdown and kicked the extra point, I turned to Mr. Boyd. I said, Mr. Boyd, would you kick an onside kick here? Because I'm thinking, I want to go ahead and end this game right now. But he said, no, you go ahead and kick it and play defense. So sure enough, the Falcons kicked it and they played defense. And you all know what happened next. Tom Brady brought the team back. They stuck the game into overtime, and they were able to win the Super Bowl after being down by 25 points, which also is the only Super Bowl that's been decided in overtime. And then yesterday, you had the comeback for the Colts, from the Colts against the Vikings. They were up 33-0 at halftime. So you would think all you got to do is get a couple first downs, run the clock out, make smart decisions. You walk away with a victory. Well, especially given in light that the Colts, this is a team that gave up 22 points, I believe, last week against the Cowboys. So you know their defense weren't that great, especially deep in the second half. So they couldn't seem to do anything right to get off the field. And the Vikings, they made big play after big play, and they had a chance to win the game after tying it up with the 2-point conversion, 36. But the Colts, all they had to do is try to kick a field goal instead of going for that quarterback sneak on 4th down, and maybe they would have won the game. But no, one thing that's consistent between all these different games and comeback, those teams that are behind everything they need to come back to happen, it happens for them. And that is the constant of all comebacks. It doesn't matter how good your teams are. It doesn't matter what you thought was going to happen. Everything has to happen when they happen in order for these teams to come back. Because in the beginning, they were out-coached and they were outplayed, and that was no accident. What was the problem with those teams when they get those big leads like that? You don't never really plan for that, and you start going into coast mode instead of continuing to attack. Had all those teams continued to attack, it wouldn't have been no stories about the comeback. So you're going to see these again. More common in the NBA and basketball, but football, rare occurrence. But 33 points, I don't see too many more comebacks from that larger of deficit. So those are my takes on those big sports comebacks that I just happen to be a witness to. This is Sports for Real.